All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at Kristin Hannah's The Women.
Oh, yeah.
This historical fiction novel, it's set during the Vietnam War.
Okay.
And we've got this fascinating kind of mix of sources here.
Yeah.
We've got some professional reviews, reader comments, and even some pretty heated online discussions.
Interesting.
It's a real, like a blend of praise and criticism, and that's kind of what makes this one so intriguing.
So The Women has become a bestseller.
Right.
But it's also sparked, like, a ton of debate.
Right.
Particularly around how it portrays, like, women's experiences during the war.
Yeah. So before we get into, like, all the controversy, let's kind of set the scene.
Okay.
The novel, it follows Frankie. She's a young woman.
Okay.
She's from a conservative Navy family.
Okay.
And she decides to enlist in the Army Nurse Corps to serve in Vietnam.
Wow.
And she's driven by this, you know, desire to be a hero, but she pretty quickly encounters, like, the brutal realities of war.
Wow. So Kristin Hannah said that she was, like, inspired by real stories of women who served in Vietnam. And she wanted to kind of bring those experiences, which are often overlooked, to light.
Right. Yeah, and she definitely succeeded in resonating with a lot of readers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially on, like, Goodreads. A lot of reviewers and commenters were, like, deeply moved by Frankie's journey.
Wow.
They found it, like, really emotionally powerful and felt that it offered, like, a vivid glimpse into the impact of the Vietnam War.
One Goodreads reviewer, Emily Booked Up, even called Frankie, quote, one of my fave MCs ever.
Oh, wow.
End quote, praising her as, quote, badass and flawed and tough and inspiring.
Oh, I love that.
End quote.
That's great.
Yeah. And there's a lot of appreciation for how the novel explores PTSD and the difficulties that veterans face when they returned home to a society that wasn't always so understanding.
Exactly. Yeah. And you see a lot of praise for Julia Whelan's narration of the audiobook.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A lot of listeners felt she added another layer of emotional depth to the story.
Oh.
So we've got this, you know, this wave of positive responses. But, and here's where it gets interesting, there's also a significant amount of criticism.
Interesting.
And some of it's pretty sharp.
Okay. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not like a clear-cut case of, like, a universally loved or hated book.
Right.
There are, like, strong opinions on both sides.
Right.
Which tells us there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's start with the writing style.
Go.
Quite a few reviewers found Hannah's prose to be a little overdone, too descriptive, repetitive, and lacking the kind of nuance they were hoping for.
So this is where we see, like, a clear divide in opinions.
Okay.
Some readers found the writing to be immersive and emotionally engaging, while others felt it was more, like, characteristic of romance novels.
Okay.
Or even, like, young adult fiction than literary historical fiction.
Yeah, and some critics didn't hold back.
Oh, really?
Lark Benobi.
Okay.
She's an author herself.
Oh, wow.
She even said that she put the book on her, quote, no shelf, end quote.
Wow.
After just a few sentences.
Oh, and yeah.
Because she found the opening lines uninspired.
Okay.
And the overall writing style bland.
That's a pretty strong reaction.
Yeah.
But it highlights, like, how important prose is to the reader's experience.
Right.
For some, the language just didn't live up to the expectations set by Hannah's reputation.
Right. And another critic, Roche, pointed out the overuse of certain phrases and the way that information was often, quote, told rather than, quote, shown, which made the story feel less immersive for them.
That critique gets at, like, a desire for more subtlety in the writing. Some readers felt that, like, the emotional impact was sometimes achieved through, like, explicit statements.
Right.
Rather than allowing the reader to, like, arrive at those feelings more organically.
Yeah, then there's the issue of character development.
Okay.
Which is interesting, given the title The Women.
Right.
A number of reviewers felt that the story focused too heavily on Frankie and kind of neglected the other women in her life.
So this is a common critique of novels that seem to promise like a broader scope, but end up centering on a single protagonist's journey.
Yeah.
Several reviewers felt that Frankie's nurse friends, Ethel and Barb, were underdeveloped.
Yeah.
Despite having backstories that hinted at, like, richer storylines.
And this sentiment was echoed in, like, online discussions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially on a Reddit thread dedicated to the book.
Oh, okay.
A lot of readers wished Hannah had, like, explored the unique challenges each woman faced and delved deeper into their friendships instead of having Ethel and Barb primarily serve as, like, Frankie's support system.
So this raises an important question about, like, whose stories get prioritized.
Right.
And how authors balance individual experiences within a larger historical context.
And it wasn't just the female characters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some reviewers also found the male characters to be one-dimensional.
Okay.
Serving mostly as romantic interests rather than, like, fully fleshed out individuals.
This critique speaks to, like, the potential pitfalls of relying on familiar tropes, particularly in romance.
Right.
Some readers felt that the relationships lacked depth and authenticity, becoming predictable rather than surprising or emotionally resonant.
And speaking of predictable,
there
were also critiques about the plot itself.
Okay.
Some readers found that coming back from the dead trope a bit too much, especially since it happens twice.
Oh, wow.
Others felt that the romantic arcs were fairly predictable and that the ending, while happy, felt a little contrived.
So the use of, like, familiar tropes can be a double-edged sword.
Right.
While they can provide, like, a sense of comfort and familiarity, they can also lead to predictability, which some readers find, like, undermines the story's impact.
Then we get into this really tricky area of historical accuracy.
Okay.
While The Women has been praised for shedding light on the role of women in Vietnam, there are definitely concerns about whether Hannah got all the details right.
This is, like, a crucial point, especially when, like, dealing with historical fiction. While authors often take creative liberties, certain inaccuracies can damage the story's credibility, even perpetuate, like, harmful misconceptions.
For example, several reviewers who have, like, firsthand experience with the Vietnam War era pointed out specific factual errors, particularly regarding, like, medical practices and military protocols. One commenter on Reddit even, like, compiled a list of these inaccuracies. Like a doctor training a nurse to perform surgery, which, according to them, would never have happened.
These inaccuracies, even if unintentional, really highlight the importance of, like, thorough research and consultation with experts to ensure that the historical details are accurate and don't, like, distract from the story's core.
Right, and here's something that raised eyebrows. Hannah acknowledges in her author's note that she, like, changed some details for narrative flow. While some readers appreciated the transparency, others found it concerning. They questioned, like, the balance between artistic license and historical responsibility.
This brings us to, like, a fundamental tension within historical fiction. The need to balance storytelling with accuracy. It's a debate that's likely to continue as authors grapple with how to bring the past to life in a way that's both, like, compelling and truthful.
And one of the most striking things we saw in the reader reactions was this repeated phrase.
Oh, really?
There were no women in Vietnam.
Wow.
It's almost unbelievable. But it popped up multiple times, even in reviews from people who served in Vietnam themselves.
It's like a stark reminder of how certain narratives become dominant, often silencing or minimizing the contributions of marginalized groups. In this case, it's like the erasure of the experiences of the women who served, particularly the nurses.
And in the novel, Frankie encounters this denial firsthand.
Oh, really?
When she returns home. Her own family downplays her service, and she faces, like, disbelief and hostility from people who refuse to acknowledge that women even served in Vietnam.
It adds, like, another layer of trauma to her experience.
It's like she's being told to just, you know, get over it, to move on as if the war never happened. But as we see through, like, Frankie struggles with addiction, flashbacks, difficulty connecting with people. The trauma of war doesn't simply vanish.
This speaks to, like, the importance of recognizing the invisible wounds of war.
Yeah.
Particularly the, psychological ones.
Right.
Hannah's portrayal of PTSD doesn't, shy away from the messy, difficult reality of it, underscoring the need for, understanding and support for veterans and their families.
And it's not just Frankie who's dealing with this.
Right.
Her friends, Ethel and Barb, are also carrying their own, unseen burdens, even though they try to, maintain a strong facade.
This emphasizes the power of, female friendship, a theme that runs throughout the novel.
Right.
These women support each other,
Yeah.
offering a sense of understanding and shared experience that they can't find anywhere else.
It's like their bond becomes a lifeline, especially when they're back home and facing a society that doesn't want to hear their stories.
Exactly. Their friendship provides a space for honesty and vulnerability.
Yeah.
Allowing them to be themselves without judgment or pressure to conform to societal expectations.
But even with that strong support system, Frankie goes through some really dark periods.
Okay.
She battles addiction, makes some questionable choices, pushes people away, which led some readers to find her unlikable or frustrating.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
It's true that Frankie isn't perfect.
Right.
Her actions can be impulsive and even self-destructive at times.
Yeah.
But I think that flawed nature makes her more human, more relatable.
Right.
It shows the complexity of trauma
Yeah.
and the long, difficult journey towards healing.
It's like she's trying to find her way back to herself, but the path is full of obstacles and wrong turns.
Precisely. And it's through those struggles that we see her strength and resilience. She doesn't give up, even when everything seems hopeless. And ultimately, she finds a way to use her experiences to help others.
Right.
Creating a healing space for herself and other women who served in Vietnam.
That part where she opens a ranch for female veterans is so powerful. It's like she's finally claiming her narrative, creating a space where their stories can be heard and honored without judgment or denial.
It's a testament to the enduring human spirit, the ability to find meaning and purpose, even in the face of unimaginable pain and loss.
Okay, but we have to address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
The romance aspects. Some readers found them cheesy, predictable, and even a bit over the top, especially that whole coming back from the dead situation twice.
This is where we see the influence of Hannah's earlier work in romance fiction. While some readers appreciated the romantic elements, others found them distracting or unrealistic, particularly in the context of a story about war and the complexities of PTSD.
And then there are those names like Kaylee and Braden, which felt very out of place for characters living in the 1960s.
Those anachronisms, while perhaps minor, highlight the importance of attention to detail in historical fiction. Even small inaccuracies can pull a reader out of the story, disrupting the sense of immersion that Hannah's clearly trying to create.
There's also been a lot of discussion about the lack of significant Vietnamese characters. Some reviewers, especially those familiar with Vietnamese culture and history, felt that Hannah missed an opportunity to portray the war from multiple perspectives, potentially perpetuating a Western-centric view of the conflict.
This is a crucial point. When telling stories about historical events, it's essential to consider, whose voices are being amplified and whose are being silenced or marginalized. The absence of, well-developed Vietnamese characters, coupled with the reliance on, stereotypical imagery, led some readers to question whether the novel truly captured the complexities of the Vietnam War and its impact on all those involved.
So we've got a book that's generated both passionate praise and pointed criticism. It sparked important conversations. But is The Women ultimately a success or a failure?
That's the beauty of art, isn't
it?
There's rarely a simple answer. The Women, while flawed in some respects, undeniably brings attention to an often overlooked aspect of history. Giving voice to the women who served in Vietnam. and faced a society that tried to erase their experiences.
It definitely left me wanting to learn more about the real women who inspired the story.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the most important takeaway. This book isn't just about Frankie.
Right.
It's about prompting like a broader conversation about representation, historical responsibility, and the enduring impact of war on individuals and society as a whole.
What strikes me is that The Women is very much a product of its time. It reflects both the evolving understanding of PTSD and the ongoing struggle for, like, recognition and equality for women, especially within the context of military service.
And it sparks some really important questions about the role of historical fiction. The balance between storytelling and accuracy and the responsibilities authors have when tackling sensitive subjects.
Those are questions that will likely continue to be debated as we grapple with how to represent the past. In a way that's both compelling and truthful. Acknowledging the complexities and nuances of history without erasing the experiences of those who lived through it.
I guess it comes down to this. The Women is a deeply flawed but undeniably powerful novel. It's a book that will stay with you long after you finish reading, prompting you to think critically about history, representation, and the human cost of war. But it also leaves you with a lot of questions and a desire to delve deeper into the many perspectives surrounding the Vietnam War and the experiences of those who lived through it. So where does all of this leave us? We've explored the emotional impact of The Women, the praise it received for bringing attention to like these often overlooked stories, but also the criticisms leveled at the writing, character development, and historical accuracy.
And what's fascinating is that those criticisms, they aren't just about like the book itself. They open up this broader conversation about like how we view history, whose stories get told, and how those stories are shaped.
Exactly. It's like that point we discussed about, you know, reviewers saying there were no women in Vietnam. It's a stark illustration of how like dominant narratives can erase the experiences of entire groups of people.
And that's something to keep in mind. As you consider all these different perspectives on The Women, is it trying to do too much? Does it fall into the trap of, like, centering one white American woman's experience while potentially sidelining the voices of, like, Vietnamese people and other marginalized groups?
Those are really important questions to consider.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, this deep dive, it isn't about giving you definitive answers. It's about like equipping you with the knowledge and a range of viewpoints so you can form your own conclusions.
I like to think of it this way. If you were writing a novel about women in Vietnam, what perspectives would you feel are essential to include?
That's a good question.
How would you navigate the complexities of representing a war that had such like profound and lasting impacts on so many different people?
And how would you balance the need for like historical accuracy with the desire to craft a compelling and emotionally resonant narrative? The Women, with all its strengths and flaws, forces us to grapple with these questions.
It really does.
So as you continue to like explore this topic, keep asking those like tough questions. Keep seeking out diverse voices and perspectives. And most importantly, keep diving deep.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Kristin Hannah's The Women. We hope you found this exploration insightful. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the sources we discussed and some further reading. We'll see you in the next deep dive.